right, welcome back. This is the week we missed with Todd and Jer. It is February 18th. Beautiful, kind of not really so beautiful day in Philly, but it's not so bad. It was sunny a couple days this week, which was awesome. I feel like we got a little tease of spring. Spring will hopefully be here sooner rather than later. So what are we talking about today? I think we've talked about this a couple times already, but it's still not ending, so we still got to talk about it. Is the Canada trucker convoy. Pretty exciting. It is still like going on. And there's like an American convoy that supposedly has begun. I don't know if that's really doing much or picking up steam, but the one in Canada seems to just get wilder and wilder. So a couple weeks ago, I was pretty frustrated by the event that GoFundMe froze like $10 million from the trucker convoy, which I feel like is just very shady. That's supposed to be money that was donated to them, and to just like unilaterally freeze that for no real good reason, at least that I saw, seemed a little bit wild, and was like, damn, that's not cool and a little bit dangerous precedent. But then fast forward 2 weeks, it gets even crazier and even more dangerous precedent. Canada has invoked, I think it's called like Act 10 or something, some act that was made in 1980s or like 20, 30, 40 years ago that was never used. This is the first time it's being used, and basically allowed the government to just freeze the banks. So now that banks are being frozen, or there's a worry that banks are being frozen, there was then a bank run, a bunch of people running the bank trying to take all of their money out. And then to me, it just shows like the importance and value of Bitcoin, because like if you don't have your money in hard cash in front of you, or you don't have your private keys for Bitcoin, you run the risk of someone else controlling your money, and that's not fun. Within one day, you can think that you're good, and all of a sudden, you have nothing at all. So that was just pretty wild to see. It's pretty crazy to just see how much the situation in Canada is escalating, and it's not stopping. And I think you just mentioned before we began, like Trudeau is definitely worried and trekking, and it's concerning to see. And I feel like it would be best if maybe the leader came out and spoke a little bit and tried to have discourse. But right now it seems like he's hiding and just coming out with more and more tyrannical, whatever the word is, policies, and that's just going to make the people more and more upset. So very wild and interesting to watch. What do you think, Todd?
Yeah, no, I think it's this is like an obvious and crazy escalation by the Canadian government. It's and you mentioned crypto and all this, but they're locking down crypto wallets, and like you said, it's like if you're using anything that is like an online service at all at this point, like it can be touched, it can be shut down, it can be taken, it can be frozen. And we're entering scary times. And like, look, I know that people don't like the truckers convoy, and we don't like they don't like what they're doing. They think it's disruptive. It is disruptive, but we've been told over and over again that the point of protest is to be disruptive, is to be inconvenient. That is how you make a point. And now all of a sudden, when some protests are on the wrong side of a political issue or the wrong side of those in power, they go full blown authoritarian. Like I don't know how anyone can look at what's happening in Canada and just be like, yeah, that's fine. Like
Well,
it's
I,
crazy.
I think the way that people are able to do that, personally, my feeling is that they're listening to mainstream media, looking at headlines, and that narrative does make it look like it's pretty okay and normal. Because like from the narrative of a couple headlines, it looks like these are horrible people completely destroying the city, and life won't be okay until they're stopped. Where if you do a little bit of research, or you like, I have a couple of friends who are actually there, so I'm able to like see it. I actually go to like the location thing on Snapchat. I like to be able to go to like eyewitness accounts and see videos firsthand. But if you go and you look at that, it doesn't look so bad. But unfortunately, most people aren't digging in at all. They're just seeing surface level, and they're like, "Oh, this should be stopped. It's not good what they're doing."
Yeah, no, I think it's it's and to say that, like, it's just been scary to watch how in online discussions and in real life, like on newscasts and stuff, like, just they've been branded as terrorists and Nazis, and people are believing it and buying it and going with it, and just it's it is crazy to see how quickly, like, they have become basically less than human, and it is okay to take away their rights. It is okay for bad things to happen to them because we disagree with what they're saying. Like, it's just really, really nuts, and it's disappointing to see. It's not surprising. I think that, all these COVID restrictions and everything else has really just, like, made it so that people are just written off as humans, and it's a super dangerous precedent to set, and it's one that I hope we sort of, like, unwind as things calm down a little bit and we come out of this, like, temporary insanity that COVID and all the restrictions have created. But I'm not super optimistic.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem so great. What do you think is like the short term, the next week or two? What do you think might happen?
Well, I mean, I know they're starting to, like, roll through and really try to clear people out. They're making arrests. They've arrested some of the leader organizers. My guess is, and I think if the trucker convoy, they've probably thought this out. I think they go full non. I know there's probably going to be a portion of them that go, like, full non-violent non-compliance and either, like, chain themselves to their trucks or just refuse to walk away with police and force them to literally drag them away. It's a very common tactic in protests of all stripes. So I think that they're going to dig in, and I think that there will be a group of the protesters who make the ending of this protest as drawn out and as painful as possible for the Canadian government and the city of Ottawa. And frankly, I know I feel bad for, the citizens of Ottawa that are having their lives disrupted. That sucks. But at the same time, like, I feel, less bad than I normally would, because I think the government is stepping out of line. I think people do need to call it out.
Hmm.
Uh, so, this is, people need to push back against government overreach. And I refuse to believe, if anyone says that what the Canadian government doing right now is a reasonable response to this, you're wrong. This is not a reasonable response. This is absolutely insane. Especially because, like, look, and this is the thing that I think everyone always does, but when Canada swings back and has a right-wing government that is a conservative PM, and there are Indigenous protests against pipelines or Black Lives Matter protests, and they're disrupting cities, wait and see, because this will happen. They will do this to anyone. This toolbox has been opened, and
Hmm.
it opened again. This idea that it will only be opened once against these people I don't like is incredibly short-sighted. And people don't understand how quickly these things get turned around and used on other people that the people cheering for now are not going to be cheering for then.
Right.
So, I think it's all going to peter out. I think we're probably going to see my guess is we see some sort of trucker convoy protest in the US. My guess is there's probably some political action committees and, on the Republican side of things that are probably trying to, figure out how they do something like this around the upcoming elections, and in general, just try to create some chaos. So I think as Canada winds down, we're going to see other ones spool up, and this is not going to be over for a long time.
Yeah. Do you think something similar could happen in America pretty soon?
I don't think in any of, like, our biggest cities, like, if you think about it, like, you wouldn't be able to get that many tractor trailers into, like, Manhattan. Like, that's just not going to
Yeah.
happen. Like,
That'd be
it's
wild. That'd be wild.
well, and people would be freaking out, like, because I know after 9/11, there's, a lot of additional scrutiny on trucks that are, like, entering the city, or at least it's something to
Right.
keep an eye on. Yeah, I don't know. And I think same with DC. If they started, like, trying to roll in 18 wheelers, like, they're going to shut that shit down fast. So I don't know. I think, I don't know what form it will take, but my guess is that we've seen the creation of sort of a new template for a protest, and it's going to be reused.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Not in like I'm not saying in a good way at all, but it's fascinating, I guess, to like watch it all play out. But what do you have to bring to us this week? I think there's plenty other crazy stuff going on in the week we missed. That's for sure.
We had talked about discussing the Ukraine Russia thing, but I think actually I remembered something else I want to talk about that I think you might have some thoughts on. So there was a mayoral candidate. I think he's running somewhere in St. Louis, or forget exactly where, but some crazy guy broke into his campaign office with a gun, shoots at him, and barely misses. The mayoral candidate said that he felt the bullet graze his like sweater. He's a Jewish candidate running. Let me look at this guy.
Louisville.
Yes, that's it. And Jewish guy running. Turns out that the person who shot him is a BLM activist who was also a gun violence activist, which is very odd. So people are claiming that he was mentally ill when he did this, which, wouldn't shock me if it's the case at all. But Louisville Black Lives Matter just posted $100,000 bail for him and got him sprung out of prison. So the politician and his family are obviously a little bit concerned.
I didn't hear about this yet. I'm like getting worked up as you're talking about it. This is absurd.
Well, in the coverage of it, there was one newspaper, I forget, but basically in the coverage, it said something along the lines of, while this attack has not been connected to any far right movements, like security experts are concerned about the rise of like the radicals on the right. And it's like, this guy was an open, like there's nothing hiding. They didn't have to dig. This guy, apparently he was a worker at the newspaper that produced this insane story that was trying to like put a right-wing spin on it. He was a known local activist. He was very involved. Like there is no way to even suggest, like, if you think this guy got somehow like polluted by the alt-right, like you're crazy. Like it's insane. And so just
this is wild.
The absolute refusal to like accept the facts on the ground when they are so clear is crazy. I also think this is something that is very common, is that I think anti-Semitic attacks in this country are erased constantly and are downplayed and are made into something else. When a person of color or minority is attacked, it is instantly the person was racist. Let's not think about, was that person mentally ill, which in many cases they are. Let's not talk about any of that. It was race-based, it was race. This is the alt-right, this is Donald Trump's fault, this is, America and the Klan, and just on and on and on. But as soon as it's sort of coming from the left or coming from a person that is really inconvenient to sort of the mainstream narrative around political violence, it's, well, this person was mentally ill. Well, this person, they just weren't in their right mind. We can't, consider their political beliefs or the fact that they might be driven by anti-Semitism or whatever the case may be. It just tries to get completely wiped away. And I'm sure you have thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I always bring up that like Jews are the most likely to be targeted in a hate crime, and it's just wild to me because even though we're the most likely to be targeted, for some reason no one really seems to care. There's like very rarely campaigns to help bring awareness. So like last year when there's Asians being attacked, they said stop Asian hate, whatever, all of that, which, yeah, we should stop Asian hate. That's obviously not a good thing, but I'm like pulling these numbers out. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but the numbers actually are pretty drastic. Is if you have one Jew attacked, it's equivalent percentage wise to probably like 3,000 Asians being attacked, just based on how many Jews there are in the world and how many Asians there are in the world. So that's
the world, yeah.
That's why and it's hard for people to understand numbers. But if you're hearing in the news just as much or even anywhere close to as many Jews being attacked as Asians being attacked, that means that there's a lot more percentage or a lot more likely chance of a Jew getting attacked. And people, for some reason, like can't understand that, and it's unfortunate. Also, a lot of people don't understand, maybe it begins with this, how many Jews there actually are. There's like less than 20 million Jews in the world. 20 million, you can fit all of those in California, and like that's it. And nowhere else would there be Jews. There's billions of Asian people, there's billions of Christians, there's billions of Muslim people. So those are like other groups that might get targeted. Billions compared to 20 million, it's a big difference. So that's super frustrating. That's, I guess, my first thought. But then also is like that it's just crazy to me that everyone is silent. They're not like backing it up as much anymore, which I'm pleased with. I'm not upset, but everyone is pretty silent about Black Lives Matter and how they are a lot of times not a good organization. I believe they're being investigated for fraud in California for like $60 million going missing. They're like supporting this, what seems like a pretty bad criminal in this case. And it's like, why aren't the people who are donating to Black Lives Matter or chanting Black Lives Matter in the streets a year or two ago saying, hey, this isn't good. Why don't we hold this organization accountable because we were supporting them? You should hold them accountable. Don't just be silent about it and be like, or when it does come up, be like, oh, it's just one case. It's not this whole organization, whatever it might be. But you don't hear anything, and that's to me, the silence is a little bit of a guilty verdict, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think because like, look, everyone who pays attention knows that oftentimes bail is used sort of in a way that disproportionately affects poor people and minorities. Completely agree. Bail can sometimes be applied to people for low-level crimes and they don't have much of a history. And now these people are sitting in jail, having a terrible life, not able to participate in their defense as well as they could otherwise. But like, no matter what way you look at this guy, like this is someone who probably shouldn't have been released on bail because you have sort of one of two options. Either he was in his right mind and he tried to basically assassinate a political candidate of a semi-large American city, or he was crazy and unstable and tried to assassinate a political candidate in a major US city. Either way, that person should probably not be walking around free.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure he will have an ankle monitor or some sort of supervision, and that's all well and good, and this is the way the system works, fine. But, the fact of the matter is, it's like, I pray to God that this guy doesn't either finish what he started specifically with that mayoral candidate, or that he doesn't engage in some other act of violence, against someone else. I mean, if the excuse is that he was so mentally unstable that he found a gun and was driven to shoot someone and do something that he otherwise wouldn't do, that's a dangerous person.
Right.
They need to be monitored, and they need to a level that is probably beyond someone tracking them with an ankle monitor. So, I hope we don't see this person do anything else now that he's out on bail. But, I think that if he does do something more, that it will not be shocking to me. I won't be like, oh my gosh, who could have seen this coming?
Yeah.
So it's just, it's not good. And I think that people are starting to sort of wake up to this a little bit and see that I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far in terms of, trying to protect the rights of the accused. We went a little overboard, and now I think, you're starting to see negative impacts in cities across the country.
Yeah, no, I mean, starting to see negative impacts. I think it's just starting to get a little out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon, which is like the worrisome part is it seems like it's only going to get wilder and wilder in the short term at least. But that was a wild story. Thank you for sharing that with me, because I 100% wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
I'm already definitely gonna like share that on my social media accounts and do my venting and be like, why didn't I hear about this? Because this is a horrible situation that obviously wasn't really shared much, because they probably want to keep it low.
One of those things where at first I think it was talked about a lot, but then as soon as they figured out who the attacker was, it was like, ooh, yikes, let's not talk about this anymore. It was the same thing with the Jewish or the synagogue hostage situation that we saw a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. You know, time flies now, but it
Yeah.
was, you know, I saw in Reddit threads when it was first posted, everyone's like, oh, of course, some like white supremacist in Texas is taking these nice Jewish people hostage in their synagogue. And then as soon as it came out, it was like some Pakistani guy who was doing it to get out like a convicted or alleged like terrorist financier or someone who's involved with ISIS. It's like, oh, okay, moving on.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
Which also just reminds me, I think we'll close out with this. Something I think you definitely predicted, and you're right on the money with it. Joe Rogan's not even an issue anymore. Like, he's completely out of news. And I think you were right. They went with the as much as they could right off the bat, and that was dumb because it didn't work, and now they got nothing else.
Yeah, no, I mean, whatever that little cliche saying is, if you shoot for the king, you best not miss. Is it's like, look, like in terms of culture, like I think Joe Rogan is about as uncancelable as it gets, because like it's sort of weird because with like canceling or trying to take someone down, like people act like the way I see people talk about this online, it's like Joe Rogan shouldn't have a job anymore. It's like Joe Rogan doesn't have a job.
Yeah,
He is a business. That would
yeah,
be like saying that like Walmart shouldn't have a job. It's like you can't fire Walmart. It's a giant corporate entity. It's like you can't fire Joe Rogan. Like
yeah,
you can't deplatform him. Like he has more money and resources. Like Joe Rogan would be able to basically make any platform he went to just immensely popular and more people on it. He could create his own app overnight and probably retain half of his audience, even if they had to pay a couple bucks a month for it. Like it's this thought that he was going to get taken down by this or kicked off Spotify, and that if he did get kicked off Spotify, that would somehow be like a blow to him. It was always like, you people just don't understand how business works or like the scale or like what Joe Rogan is doing. Like
exactly.
I'm not even like a massive fan. I listen sort of based on who he's interviewing, but like it's just been funny to watch these people. It'll be funny to watch these people with their just reactions to this. It's been hilarious, and they're just completely out of touch with reality.
Yep. No, and I think it upsets me that a lot of people with a lot of things make their decision on him before they even investigate or think about it at all. And like, unfortunately, too, I feel like if I say I don't share that I listen to Joe Rogan to people I'm just meeting until I know them a little bit better, because a lot of people will throw you into this box of oh, you're a like rich white male who just puts everyone else down. Like, that's like the Joe Rogan frat bro type of thing. And it's like, it sucks that just because I don't even really listen to him, I just don't hate him. And I'm like, I think what he's doing uh is can be important. And I love what he does for like wellness. He's a big supporter of like exercise, martial arts, which is like kind of balance of your mind and body and all of that. He does a lot of things that I think are pretty good. Where just if he probably does a lot of things I don't agree with. That doesn't mean like you have to hate him. And it sucks that a lot of people are like that. But pretty funny, he won that. He's probably just making more money now. So it didn't really do anything except backfire for them.
Well, and the funniest thing has been watching like CNN and other mainstream media people be like, why do so many people listen to him and not us? And it's like, I don't know, because you guys suck.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you push misinformation too, except you wrap yourselves in journalistic freedom and like talk about what heroes you are, and you're boring and you're not interesting and you're not fun and you suck. And that's why more people listen to Joe Rogan. And also this idea that like, just because Joe Rogan has, you know, millions of people listening to him, that he somehow has this responsibility. It's like, no, he doesn't. Like he can be as wild and crazy as he wants. You know, I think, and I've seen people kick this around, and I think if Joe Rogan wanted to do something, like he should just pay a fact checker, and once a week that guy will release a podcast with basically like, I fact checked the last 7 guests on Joe Rogan. Here are the things that were like wrong or a little bit weird, and here's some clear information on it. Like if he wanted to do that, like I think it would blunt a lot of this criticism, but I don't think he's obligated to. I don't think he will. And I think he's, at the end of the day, probably just laughing all the way to the bank about this, because I think you're absolutely right. There's no way that fewer people know about Joe Rogan now than before. Like his presence has probably only been elevated by this, and will probably really realistically only make his future brighter and more money, more filled with money.
Another exciting thing to watch, but I think that was not a good week we missed in sense of like things we want, but definitely exciting, action-packed, lot to keep track of. Hopefully our viewers enjoy our perspective. I still been meaning to, and I need to get on it. I want to have some guests on. I want to have people who just share their opinion, but I also want to try and get some people who are maybe involved in any of these things to any capacity, and get like some more perspective from maybe someone who's a little bit more involved. But that's all about I have to say. Todd, any closing thoughts, statements, whatever's?
No, sure. Have a good weekend, everybody, and peace.
All right, much love. Peace.